Spend your afternoon
with Relebogile Mabotja
on 702.
Let's walk the talk. 13 minutes to 2 o'clock. Let's have a conversation around electronic signatures and how secure they are. We're joined by Sharon Knowles, who is a certified cyber crime investigator. And you can get your questions through to Sharon on 011-883-0702 and the WhatsApp line 0727021702. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us on 702 Afternoons.
Good afternoon, Lebo, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Sharon, what is an electronic signature? Because I just imagine that little image embedded into my email that says Relebogile Mabotja 702 presenter with my email address.
Well, you are right to a certain extent. An electronic signature is a digital representation of a person's handwriting signature usually, but it could be a symbol, a sound, or a process. And what it's used to do is indicate the signer's intent to agree or to authenticate a document or record. So it's basically the electronic equivalent of a traditional handwritten signature on a physical document.
And I think obviously looking back at COVID and how we had to forego physical meetings for agreements and contracts, it must have increased over the last few years.
Oh, definitely. I think COVID launched us into this digital arena faster than what we were ready for here in South Africa. And business had to make a lot of adjustments in the way that they did things. And I think electronic signatures and the way that we signed our documents all reverted to electronic signature.
So maybe just help clarify the difference between electronic signatures versus digital signatures. So, one of the most common ways that I've experienced having to sign documents is either Adobe or there will be some online link that allows you to add or to draw into some little square somewhere and to add your initials. But many of them are just done via PDF.
Yeah, so there are tools that you can make use of. And you'll find that the big insurance companies and some of the banks make use of those. So there are different types of electronic signatures, and you get the simple electronic signature, which is a basic representation of a person's signature, and it could be scanned or typed name at the end of an email. They're easy to create, but have limited legal weight. And obviously that's when the forgery and cybercrime comes in. You have a biometric signature, and a biometric signature sort of captures unique biometric data such as your fingerprint or your voice pattern, and it's used to create a more secure and verifiable signature. And they provide a very strong level of authentication. Your digital signature use what we call cryptographic technology, and this creates a unique digital fingerprint, which is also known as a hash of the signed document. And this is usually where let's use the insurance companies, when they send a link to you and they say, click on the link and you'll be taken to a sort of a platform where you sign your documents. And digital signatures are often backed by the trusted third party, as you mentioned, Adobe, and are widely accepted for a lot of legal purpose. You then get your qualified electronic signature, and this is a very specific type of digital signature that meets very strict regulatory requirements, and it's defined by a specific type of law. And these are also used by accredited trust service providers, and they provide sort of the highest level of legal validity and enforceability. And if you can remember, when we all, in the beginning of COVID, we all had to, everybody said to us, we now need to have a digital signature, and you know how you're sort of taking photos of your signature to try and get it out and figure out how to get it online. You can use Adobe and other programs that now assist you in making sure that your signature is saved online and it is a credible representation of your signature.
So I think how you've explained it makes sense. I'm just wondering about the part of the legal weight that you mentioned in the earlier explanation. So if, let's say, you had to challenge a signature that didn't use biometrics, that, was just something, a PDF, how do you go, or rather, how is it that it doesn't carry legal weight? Because would somebody have to go and prove that actually you went and copied this and cut it out in Photoshop and pasted it and made it look like my signature?
So the first thing I'm going to say, legal disclaimer, is I'm not a lawyer, but the way that we interpret it is that an electronic signature can be used in most transactions unless the law prohibits that use of that electronic signature. And there are very specific areas where you cannot use electronic signature, and that's lease agreements of immovable property, which are not longer than 20 years, mandates to sell or rent immovable property, and then your will. But the problem with electronic signatures that we do ourselves at home, and as you say, take it into Photoshop and, twist it and turn it and then save it into a PDF, is that they can be easily forged. So the law does recognize an electronic signature, and that is the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, number 25 of 2002. And legal requirements for electronic signatures on documents are accepted. And if you have to be very specific if you want to go up against, just saying that a signatory is not valid because it's electronic signature. There are specific rules, and the law does sort of put it out how you can go, or how it is to be utilized, and what sort of areas you can't and must use advanced electronic signatures.
So what can people do to protect themselves? Because obviously many of us are not walking around with the wealth of knowledge that you are sitting with, especially in terms of what qualifies as a valid agreement, in terms of certain agreements that you can't be entering into digitally, but maybe you don't know. So what can listeners do to be mindful and just to exercise certain precautions to protect themselves?
So I think it's going back to basics. If you receive a document that has been signed, and that document has got something to do with an asset in any way, pick up the phone and check. I know it is an extra step, but in the long run, it's better to be safe. You get a lot of documents where it's just information sharing, and there is a signature. But anything that has to do with assets, your will, moving of money, anything like that. And when you have a look at that document that comes in, and it might say, okay, it's this insurance house or it's this bank, always double check. I think with the cybercrime that is increasing these days, there are some areas where we just need to make sure, even for ourselves, you pick up the phone and you say, to your broker, I've received this document. It's been signed by John Doe, and it says that they're removing these funds. Would that be would that be correct? And the other thing is, when you're sending a document with a signature that you've done, you always need to ensure that the way that you've done it, and you've embedded it into your mail, is done through a reputable third party. So there are a lot of free apps and free programs on the internet that people download, and they do their signature and it stores it for them. Don't use free. Free is good for some things, but things that have to deal with your assets, don't use free.
All right, there's a WhatsApp message which says, my understanding is there is a difference between scanning my signature and using it in comparison to an example like DocuSign or Adobe Sign. Surely the scanned one is problematic.
Yes, because it can be forged. So it's always wise, especially for a business, any company that's using electronic signatures should use a third-party vendor, a well-known third-party vendor. For you and I that are in the streets and we're sending a mail up and down, there is a way to create a signature, especially the programs that come with your PC or your Mac and that. But a scanned, I never accept a scanned signature. It doesn't matter who it's from. I always phone and check. And it's easily, if you scan it, it's an image or a bitmap, and it can be replicated.
So there is another WhatsApp message that says, we are a trusted services provider of advanced electronic signatures in South Africa, accredited by the South African Accreditation Authority. So I'm assuming then, Sharon, if people aren't sure, they can check up with the South African Accreditation Authority.
Correct.
Any final thoughts just for our listeners, particularly when it comes to cybercrime and the signatures that we possibly take for granted and are not fully aware of?
Just to remember, anything that deals with an asset, double check. Doesn't matter who you got the mail from or where the letter came from, double check.
Sharon Knowles, thank you so much for your time, just speaking to us there around electronic and digital signatures. And as she's reiterated, your will, anything to do with assets, lease agreements, I would even go as far, and I'll chat to Wendy Nola when she comes to join us, and ask her about those contracts that we do over the phone and the digital signatures, if we need to take that into consideration, especially when it comes to our credit score. But thank you so much to Sharon Knowles on that.